So let's talk about transition specifically. First, it's a journey. It's not a place, and it is not a program. When I hear somebody tell me when I'm working someplace, oh, let me show you our transition program, I'm already in a bad place, okay? Because that tells me you're going to put everybody in a box, okay? That's not what it's about. It is a journey, and again, I'll give you personal. My daughter Dina, and again, this goes back a number of years ago, we were in suburban Denver at the time. I was the Colorado exec at that job, and she was finished her sophomore year in high school. We had chosen when we moved there, the school district, the high school, bought a house nearby so she could walk to school, have friends with and without disabilities. And Dina's a pretty cool young lady, mild intellectual disability. She was included a fair amount, some not. And comes time for her junior year, her IEP in the spring, and so with Dad, I was a single dad at the time, we start discussing at dinner, let's start thinking about what kinds of things you want to do, because we ought to start doing that kind of stuff. So she had all kinds of things, and we broke it down and put it into 3 categories, most of which have never changed throughout her life. I want to work with little kids, I want to work with animals, or I'd like to work in an office. I mean, and everything on her list I felt was clearly achievable. She wasn't saying, you know, I want to be a veterinarian, and maybe she could have been one, I don't know that, or a veterinary assistant, but whatever. So we go to her IEP meeting. The director, who had a PhD, and again, we're talking in the, get my years right here, early 80s. So we sit down and we're doing the usual stuff, and I said, okay, can we stop? Because I know the meeting's on a clock, and Dina and I have been talking, and she'd like to share with you what she'd like to be doing for employment for the next year or 2. So she starts to read her list, and this is in my brain, folks, like it happened yesterday. Ann was her first name. She interrupts Dina. Listen, I want you to hear this. That's very nice, Dina. We don't do it here that way, okay? So Dina said, but this is what I want to do. So Ann comes back and said, let me tell you what we have. We have a contract with a food service company, and you'll get to go over there and learn different parts of the job and whatever. And Dina says, I don't want to do that. Dina is petite, she's got small hands. I mean, she cooks in her own kitchen, but she said, I'm afraid I'd have to use a big knife and cut stuff up. All legitimate, right? Ann says, oh well, we always don't get what we want, Dina, okay? You have to learn, I want you to hear the words, how to take supervision, how to be on time, and how to get along with coworkers. Some of you may know that as work adjustment training. Now, here's Dad, advocate, but my grad education was in rehab, work adjustment training, okay? So I said to Dina, you know, Ann's got a point, give it a try. So let it go, summer goes on. First week of school, Dina wasn't saying much. I get a call the second week, Allan, and we're having troubles with Dina. What's the trouble? Oh, she's throwing food, she's cussing, she's whatever. And at that point, I was already where I needed to be, but I threw the switch to her because I wanted to bait her. And I said, so what are you going to do about it? Answer. We're going to get a behavior management person over there to teach her how to be compliant. Yeah, you can go, that's real. At which point I said, over my dead body. I said, Dina told us in the spring, and I said us, she did not want to be there. We did not respect that. You said it had to be that way. All behavior, Ann, is communication. Her regular communication was not received well, so this one is, get her out of there and let's figure something else out. That's a powerful message that I share with you of my learning. And I can assure you it's still happening in some places today where there is a program and you will learn to live within the boundaries of the program or we'll fix you so you will. okay? There's no excuse for that. Long story short, I said, now let's get her what she said she wants. So then the next step was, and I was ready to file complaints and whatever, is she said, oh, well, we found the school on the other side of town has somebody who does what you want. Oh, okay. So we're going to put Dina on a bus and bus her to that school. I said, excuse me. She's a junior. She doesn't know anybody over there. All her friends go to this school. I wouldn't do that to a neurotypical kid, let alone any other kid. Get whoever this magic person is over there to come here. Well, I don't know if we can do that. 2 weeks later, Rich shows up, meets Dina. They spend time getting acquainted. And guess what? He got her to start working at a daycare center in Denver. She had to take the bus to go there in the wintertime, never missed a day of work, never had a problem, no behaviors. She loved it. She was nurturing the kids. She got to learn how to read to kids and all this stuff. And I share that with you because she had already explored what she wanted to do. And even if that hadn't worked out, we would have said, okay, you gave it a try, let's do something else. But here she was forced into something she said she didn't want to do because it was the program. So anytime I hear place or program or Transition Academy, I've heard in a place recently, my red lights go flashing. It's a journey for each person and it's different. Okay, so here again, the transition amendments, we talked about them earlier. Academic and functional, results-oriented, movement from school to post-school. And it's real post-school, it isn't babysitting. Post-secondary ed, voc ed, integrated employment, okay? And please today, pay attention to voc ed, okay? Look at what is happening in our labor force. Carpenters, plumbers, electricians, HVAC companies are begging for people. And that's not to say all of the students can do it, but how many might like to do that and can start out at an apprenticeship and even weave some of it in as part of their IEP if it's at a local voc ed or community college stuff, okay? And do you want to talk about an outcome? No offense to those of us who go to college. Some of those kids can end up making more money at the end of 2 years than somebody with a 4 years bachelor's degree today. I mean, in Chicago area where I live, they will start you as a plumber at $50K, and at the end of 3 years, if you prove yourself, they guarantee you $150K. How many college graduates are making $150K after 3 years? And I'm not knocking it, but we need to open the door and not say, oh, that's garbage stuff, which is what, when I grew up, was everybody had to go to college. I'm not knocking it, but for a lot of people, college today, particularly, you'll be bankrupt. So just think, and strengths, preferences, and interest. You never know, okay? Each student should plan to be part. I showed you the Play-Doh thing. Oh, let me give you another example on transition. Birmingham, Alabama. I was doing some work there a couple of years ago, going around the state on Medicaid waivers and employment, and we had in the audience a VR counselor and a special ed teacher and some parents, families, group. And after we're going through some of this guy gets up, can I tell you a great story? I said, sure. So he was a voc rehab counselor, talked about this young man who was a senior in high school, and he wanted to start working. So they got him a job as a janitor. Okay, so I'm thinking, where's this going? Because that doesn't make me feel real good. But it was a janitor at a welding factory, okay? So they get him set up, show him the ropes, counselor sets him up, the teacher, all that's fine. I think they went out a couple of times, he was doing pretty good. At the end of 3 months, they sit down to have a meeting at the factory. And everything's going well, and the supervisor says he's really got the job down, he likes it here and whatever. And then they asked the young man, what do you think? He said, I want to be a welder. Hang on. And they said, what are you talking about? He said, let me show you. Because a shift must have been from 3 to something. So for a couple hours, he saw the welders working while he was cleaning. And then after they left, he started to work with their machines. Oh my God, why would he do such a terrible thing? okay? That's called discovery. So he went to the machine and started to do welding. The VR counselor wouldn't have known if it was right or not. The supervisor said, wow. And then he says to VR and the special ed teacher, get him the certificate at the whatever voc ed school. I will hire him at $28 an hour. He didn't have to worry about SSI. That's exploration. That if he had been sweeping floors at McDonald's, that never would have happened. And you had said to him, do you want to be a welder? He wouldn't know what the hell a welder was, would he? Okay? That's part of this exploration. So I share it with you. That's real. It happened in Birmingham, Alabama, perfectly by coincidence. You know? But how often do things happen because of coincidence that are good things? So again, just you never know. Okay. Functional voc eval. The IEP has to include post-secondary goals, okay? That's what's clear, and this is from the manual from OSERS, okay? And what's needed to reach the goal, okay? Not what's the wide-range achievement test. Another area that I am very concerned about is technology. I am far from a tech guru. But please, every time you're doing an IEP, put on the menu, what role can technology play here? From low-tech, off-the-shelf stuff, to moderate, to customized, and everything in between. It is amazing what it can do for people in increasing their independence and choice and control, and reducing their dependency on paid supports. Okay, and this is the definition from the Federal Tech Act law: increase, maintain, improve functional capabilities and accessibility. And the law is identical in IDEA, Rehab, the Assistive Technology Act, and the DD Act. And most states, Medicaid will pay for most of this stuff later on as well. So I want to give you an example, real quick. Person I worked with in Chicago, who I see from time to time, superb supported employment person and coach, really. And she calls me periodically, we update, and this was about 5 years ago. Allan, we need to meet out at this Target, I've got a problem. Okay, Georgette, fine. So I meet her out there, we're sitting in the coffee place watching the cashiers, and over here she says, watch the guy in lane 7. So I'm watching, nice smile, good social skills, seems to be making change okay, seems to put stuff in the bag okay. To which I said, okay, what am I missing? And she said, he's about to be fired. I said, okay, I'm confused. Why? They have staggered breaks at Target, as they do in many companies. When he goes to the break room, he gets so into the computer and playing computer games, he loses track of time, and he needs to get back so the guy in the next lane or woman can go take their break. So the supervisor is had it up to here because he has to keep going to get him to come back to work. So I said at that point, kind of like I did the special ed director, so what are you planning to do about this? Well, I was going to get another job coach in here and maybe a behavior management person. I said, come with me. And appreciate I am not in the techie generation like many of you. I know enough to be dangerous. So we walk over to the jewelry department. I'm looking around. I'm looking for a watch that has an alarm clock on it. I see one, get the person to take it out. I said, I don't even know how to set this up. And if you have to go through procurement, from what you're telling me, it won't happen. I'm going to buy it. It's my gift to you, to him. Get it set up so he knows when he has to go back from break. Here's the sad part. And remember, I hold her in high esteem. She looked at me like I was God reincarnated. Technology is not on her list. What do human service professionals do when they have a problem? Bring in another human service professional or a paraprofessional. Please put technology on it. So here's the better part of the story. So I said, I'll leave it to you. I got to go. Good luck. Let me know how it turns out. She calls me 2 weeks later. I said, well, is he still working? Oh, yeah. She said, that was amazing. Within 2 days, he had it down perfect. And we helped him set it. The manager did. When his break time, he knew, because they told him, when he went in the room, what to click on, and when he needed to get up to get out, so he'd get back in time. I said, wonderful. So he's still working? She said, oh, no, it's better than that. I said, I beg your pardon? Remember I told you it looked like he had good social skills? He became the assistant manager of customer service for a $40 watch. Okay? It isn't always going to happen, but I have to share these with you. These are real. And I'm not a techie, but I knew enough to know they make watches with alarm clocks now. He just needed some buzzer or something to say time to go. And I thought that was a little more sophisticated than getting a timer like you use in your kitchen to put on the desk or something like that. So please think about technology any which way that you can use it. Okay, so here's what is supposed to happen according to the law. Coordinated set of activities, community experiences. You can read all this stuff. This is straight from some stuff from OSEP a couple of years ago. That's the transition, and it's a process. Remember, it's a journey. It is not a program. And who's supposed to be involved? Oh my God. Whose life are we planning? The teachers, the therapists, the mommies, the daddies, or the students? They are at the center of this. Again, I'm sure it's not your school district, but many school districts, you don't need to bring your son, you don't need to bring your daughter. We know what they need, we know what they want. Really? How do you know that? Okay. So, example, I do something called Partners in Policy Making Leadership Training here and in many other states. We had a mom several years ago who heard this and also heard it from a self-advocate. Your children need to be there. It's their life. She goes home, talks to her husband. They live in Glenview, nice suburban district, but most of the parents didn't bring their kids because they were told they didn't need to. Seth at that time, I think, was maybe 10, 11, 12, whatever. 12, I think. And they decided they were going to bring him to the meeting. He's on the autism spectrum. He has an iPad that has voice-activated stuff. So they come to the meeting whenever it was scheduled, open the door. The 6 professionals were, their face, she said it all. Like, what the hell is he doing here? They didn't say it, but they said it. So they go in and they go around and they do the introductions. And I don't think the parents did this. I think he did it himself when they told him what was going on. So they introduce, and then it's his turn. He puts on his thing. Hi, I'm Seth. Hang on. I'm here because I'm the expert on Seth. Total silence, transformation of that meeting. He's now fully included in middle school. Well, he's into high school now. Went to the prom. He's doing all kinds of stuff that I don't think necessarily would have happened unless he participated in the meeting and began to talk about what he wants in his life, not what they think he needs or ought to have. And I think he's all set on some career goals now and whatever kind of stuff. And the other thing is Corey, his mom, is well known in the community. The word got out. The last time I checked, 95% of the parents now bring their kids to the IEP meetings. They have transformed that school district IEP meeting. Okay? One kid, one parent who said, it's his life, not ours. We may not even agree with some of the stuff he says, but he's got to lead the life, and we'll support it unless it's really weird. Okay? So again, these are things about what does youth engagement really look like in transition? You know, are they part of the discussion? Are they part of the decision making? Can they say, yes, that's good, or no, I really don't want to do that. I want to do something else and be respected, as opposed to, oh, well, that's the way we do it here. No, it's not what I want to do. It's not what I'm interested in, okay? So just really focus, and there's just some other kinds of stuff about skills, you know, all these nice words to be thinking about in a word cloud, and valuing the person. And you tell me to be a self-advocate, but your actions show otherwise. So tell me what you want. Well, that's nice, but. Or that's very nice, but we can't do that, or we can't afford it, or whatever it might be. I feel like I shouldn't even be there if they're not going to ask me questions or acknowledge me. I get it. How would you like to be sitting in a meeting that's about your life and you don't even get to participate? Not fun. Okay, there may be some adult allies. Again, you can bring somebody with you if you want. It's fine. So these are just ways to look at this, and you'll have all the slides graphically. And then here's a big one from Abe Lincoln in our state. You can't help people permanently by doing for them what they could and should do for themselves. We in the field call that the dignity of risk. Ladies and gentlemen, it is one of the biggest barriers for people with intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, more complex disabilities, is we want to take care of them, do it to them and do it for them, and then they have what's called learned helplessness. And then we want to know why they don't self-initiate. Okay? It's okay to make a mistake. Now, if somebody's an eloper, no, you're not going to let them go walk out in the streets and whatever. Yeah, you have to have some conditions. But the dignity of risk to say, I want to try being a welder. I want to try being a carpenter. I'd like to work with children. I'd like to work at an animal shelter. Okay, fine, let's try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we're not going to beat up on you. You tried something and it didn't work. Try something else. Try something. How many of us went to college with a certain goal in mind our freshman year and changed majors at least once or twice or 3 times? Okay? Did anybody beat up on you for that? No, that's part of learning. We need to have that same context for students with disabilities. Try it. You don't like it? Let's try something else. Oh, you flunked. Too bad, you're all done. And that's often what we do. Pass, fail. Too bad, bye. So remember good Mr. Lincoln. Okay, here's another one for you. You want data? Rob Chimera is an economist, not one of us. Here's data. It's already old. Starting at 14 versus 16, you all know you can do it at 14, you must do it at 16. Again, the recession hit, so that's why the numbers went down. But look at the comparative data, and don't do this as percents. Look at people. By starting at age 14, 81 people had employment when they got out versus 59. That's 22 people more who got employment by starting 2 years earlier, okay? And even with the recession, it was 69 versus, that's 17 more. Folks, that's 30% increase. I don't know that anybody looks at these data to say, wow, could we get a better bang for the buck for the school district, for the taxpayer, if we started 2 years earlier, beginning to raise that expectation and think about what needs to be going on in transition. Here it is for kids with ID. Okay, the numbers are a little bit less, but look at the disparity again by starting at 14. 74 kids versus 58. 43 versus 28. That's massive, right? Yet, most schools will start at 16. But I don't know that anybody's ever shown them this to say, look what you could do as a school board to feel proud about your outcomes, as a superintendent, as a principal, and what you could say back to the taxpayers. We've reduced dependency on the public dole by spending a little more money now, okay? And again, looking, best thing, I saw it earlier, work experience, Eric Carter, expectations, deficits, and what you can't do to strengths, preferences, interests, gifts, and contributions. Relationships matter. This is inclusion. This is coming from Eric Carter. This is now almost 10 years ago already. Okay, but the best predictor, parental and teacher expectations. Raise that bar, no plateaus. Okay, this is the guidepost for success. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this document. You can go get it up online. There's the site for it. And it was jointly developed by ODEP and Education. It's a literature review. It's a little old now. And it points out the full range of successful services for all kids. And then there's a subset of additional things for kids with disabilities. You want to talk about accommodations, this is a wonderful manual. I'm not even going to read it to you. I'm just going to show you a couple of them so you can see. So here are the grounding principles, the applicable literature, okay? High standards, regardless. Career options, not jobs. Okay, exposure to the world of work, structured internships, social civic leadership skill opportunities, connections to, I mean, this is what we do for all children. And it's saying these have to happen for children with disabilities, regardless of the disability complexity, okay? And here are the categories: school-based prep, career prep, work-based learning, youth development leadership, okay? And they divide it into 2 levels, all kids and then kids with disabilities. So here's the all youth, just so you can get a flavor for how they organize this manual. So these things apply to everybody, okay? Career and technical ed programs based on professional industry standards, okay? Supports from and by highly qualified staff. Oh, you mean we have to spend money to train staff to be competent? Yeah, we do. And this is my favorite word, my people know this in partners, fidelity. Learn how to do whatever it is and then follow the book. Don't shortcut, don't cheat, don't make assumptions. Follow the sequence of what it is you're supposed to be doing, because if we do not have fidelity to the practice, it's going to mess up, and then we're going to say, see, we told you gym can't work, so sorry, go to a day program. And we blame the victim as opposed to looking at the mirror and saying, what could we have done differently? What didn't we do? How we might do it different. We have to own it as professionals to be responsible for outcomes and not failure. Because if there's a failure, okay, then let's try something else. But let's not say, therefore, they're a loser and throw them away. And that's what we tend to do. And then here is the ones for youth with disabilities. Use their individual transition plans. This is gorgeous. To drive instruction and strategies, okay? Develop knowledge of reasonable accommodations. You need to know what those look like, what the law requires under ADA. Highly qualified transitional support staff that may or may not be school staff. There are some schools in this country that contract out with community provider agencies to help do some of the transition employment stuff. That's fine, nothing wrong with that. If they build it into the IEP, sometimes Voc Rehab will do this in the pre-employment transition services. We'll talk a little more about that. But what I'm trying to show you is, I love this manual because it says, here's the foundation for all kids, and then here are the additional things for kids with disabilities or the accommodation, okay? Here's the next part. Career prep, work-based learning. All youth need information on career options. All youth. No, not the kids in the significant disability being excluded. Why can't they know what's out there and get a chance to look at it? Like the guy with the welding. If they had just said, would you like to be a welder? He wouldn't know what that was. Oh, let's go spend a couple of hours and we'll tour the welding factory. Let's go out here and watch some electricians or watch whatever it might be, okay? Exposure, exposure. See it, smell it, taste it, feel it, put your toe in the water. You've all heard these phrases, okay? That's the real world. That's the real world of choice, okay? You don't know it if you don't know it. How many things have you entered into? Gee, I don't even know what this is, but okay, I'll try it. Oh, I didn't like that. Okay, that's fine. That's part of the dignity of risk. But if you don't even try, how do you know? And in this state, give you an example, when Quinn was trying to close a couple of institutions, a gentleman running the agency for DD was Kevin Casey, really good advocate. He went down to, I forget which of the places it was, doesn't matter, for a staff meeting, but the union, knew he was coming. They had 2 residents waiting for him as he walked across from the parking lot to come out to him. Don't close this place. This is our home. We live it here. And you could see, he could see the union people peeking around the corner of the building. Well, they didn't want to lose their jobs. So Kevin, being the cool guy he is, said, well, has anybody shown you what's out there in the community? No. Well, would you like somebody to show you, and you 2 guys like each other? Yeah. Where you could live together in the community, maybe in downtown Springfield and whatever. And all of a sudden, they went to a different place because all they heard it was going to be closed and they didn't know what was going to happen. He arranged for a case manager to come from Springfield, spend time with both these guys, showing them about 4 or 5 different living options, and he said, I'll come back for your planning meeting in a few months. So you get the director of the division coming to the planning meeting for these 2 guys. They didn't want to stay there anymore. There was this lovely apartment in downtown Springfield where they were able to get affordable rent, get tied in with some supports, and be able to walk around downtown Springfield and whatever. Had that not happened, they would have continued to stay, this is my home, I want to stay here. Okay, you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know it. That's a really powerful statement for all of us, okay? And this is real, and I love having these anecdotes to share with you of really tough situations, because I don't know how many other people in that job would have rebutted these 2 guys or just blown them off and said, I got to go to a meeting. No, Kevin was an advocate, and guess what? That in turn helped a bunch of other residents move out because they knew these 2 guys. And they said, we heard they're downtown or whatever, okay? So, counts, okay? All youth need career prep, work-based learning, okay? Learn and practice the work skills called soft skills. Learn about, okay? So this is for everybody. Multiple on-the-job training. Again, not just one thing. Can be paid, can be unpaid. Volunteer, okay? Internships are growing these days. Apprenticeships are growing. There are federal laws that they have to accommodate people with disabilities. There are even some special things going on in some of the apprenticeship now. You need to explore those in your community because they vary from community to community. These are all open to kids with disabilities that 10, 15 years ago, that was not on the table at all. Part of it's the ADA, part of it's work from the Department of Labor Office of Disability Employment Policy, some of it's Medicaid stuff. It's a lot of different federal agencies, okay? Career prep for the youth with disabilities. Understand appropriate financial benefits planning, career choices, how to get supports, how to know the system, okay? Again, these are just highlights I wanted you to see because I love the manual. Here's for everybody, and here's what I'll call the accommodations for these for the kids in transition and IEPs, okay? All youth need peer-to-peer mentoring. I cannot stress to you enough in transition, if you have some graduates who have been successful, if you have some parents who initially were over here and well, whatever, but now are over here, bring them into your school. I am a firm believer that peer teaching is the most successful strategy. I say the same when I work with employment and employers. I want the Chamber of Commerce to have a panel with 4 employers who have been successful in hiring people with disabilities. If I go up there, I'm the hired gun. They know I'm going to tell them it's the best thing since sliced bread. But if 4 of their peers are up there from different lines of work talking about what people are doing, the kind of support they got from the provider agency or whatever, guess what? There are going to be some other folks, because labor is a problem. Hey, I want to learn more about it. Oh, well, see that guy in the back of the room? Go talk to him. That's the role I would play. So peer mentoring, peer-to-peer, in our work, in parent work, in self-advocacy work, is mind-boggling impactful. So if you have people who have been successful, who initially were resistant, this happened in Michigan when they were closing their institutions, and there were a lot of resistant parents. There were some who were so, but decided they'd try it. They became believers. There was a core group of 6 of those parents who then went back to the institutions in Michigan to talk about their lived experience of what they thought of the institution, what they thought about going out, and how it has now transformed their child's life. I say it, you know, they expect me to tell it. When they say it, and they can put their guts on the table, that's powerful. You get a parent who said, I never thought my kid could work. And now they're working, and they're earning money. And no, they didn't lose their benefits, and I've got an ABLE account, or they're even thinking now of getting their own place. Those kinds of stories, from the peer to the peer, will cause that cognitive dissonance we talked about earlier, but in addition, may give them a chance to say, could I call you and talk to you later? Could I meet you at Starbucks for a cup of coffee? Great. That's what you want to have happen, a relationship. The same with the self-advocates. So we all need that kind of stuff. Mentors, role models, absolutely. Everybody needs it. And people need to know their rights and their responsibilities. Connections. You got to know about transportation. How am I going to get to wherever it is? How do I learn how to get there? All of this. But again, this is for all kids. I mean, if you're a kid without a disability and you're going to go to work, how are you going to get there? You're going to hitchhike? Is there a bus? If you're a person with a disability, is there paratransit? You're going to have to get a ride, whatever it is. Okay, same kind of thing. And here's the thank you for technology. There it is. May need it. And this is from the manual. They may need mobility training, how to ride the bus. Okay? That's allowed. Teach them how to ride, fade out, get them to know the bus driver if need be, to remind them of their stop. I've seen all of this stuff. Most bus drivers are happy to help if you ask them to do that. You know, always have Johnny sit right behind me, or Susie, or whoever it is. Okay? No big deal. In case they doze off. Johnny, we're coming to Broadway. That's your stop. Oh, thank you. And then Johnny knows where to go. Fine. That's a little prompt. That's an inexpensive accommodation, okay? Rather than we need somebody to drive them there. Okay, the benefits planning, all this stuff. Family involvement. All youth need their families, right? High expectations, there it is for all kids. So again, I don't want to read all this to you. I wanted you to see how this manual was built. You can all get it as a resource because I think it's invaluable, okay? And then what youth with disabilities need. They need to understand their disability. I remember hearing just the other day somebody said, they were worried about bringing their child to the meeting because he didn't really know he had autism. Oh, what did he think he had? Okay, but parents do this because of their own stigma of what the word means or their fear. You got to know, okay? And intellectual, I mean, my daughter, when she grew up, MR was the word. She's had trouble getting rid of that now, you know, saying I'm retarded. I said, no, Dina, intellectual disability. Okay, she's finally, and now she just says, I have a disability. That's fine, okay? But that was the term of art when she went to school, okay? So you get the flavor for this. WIOA, again, pre-employment transition services. Are all of you having these in your schools? Yes, some, not all. Okay, it's the law. 15% of the money has to be set aside. Every school has to have a relationship with Voc Rehab's office. All students get it, whether they're apply or being determined eligible for Voc Rehab DRS in our state, okay? And what can they do under this? Job exploration counseling, work-based learning experience, counseling on post-secondary, workplace readiness. This all is under the pre-employment transition service menu that Voc Rehab DRS must provide. If you don't have a contract with them, you need to get over to that office and figure it out, because this is a statutory responsibility that they have for every school in this state, okay? And there's definitions for each of those. I love my friend again, Rich Luking. Don't get hooked on readiness rather than actual work, because all that's going to do is keep the rates down. So it's not readiness, it's learning the skills in where you want to be, like my daughter did. Okay, here's work-based learning defined. Okay, outside the setting, internships, integrated environment to the maximum possible. That's work-based learning. Okay, now here's one thing you do need to know. You cannot volunteer in a for-profit business. There was a case a number of years ago in Ohio where somebody was doing volunteer work out of high school at a pizza place, folding boxes, whatever, and I don't know who reported them, but the Department of Labor came in and slammed them. You can only volunteer in a nonprofit or government entity. You've got plenty of nonprofits, that's fine. When you're in a place of paid employment that is not tax exempt, you must be paid unless you're doing an internship. And then there are criteria for that. But otherwise, it's got to be paid, because otherwise it's exploitation under the labor laws of our country, okay? So just know that, because I've seen some people say, oh, yeah, we're going to get a volunteer job over at TJ Maxx. No, they can't have volunteers. I think they probably know it, but don't even try, because they'll get in lots of trouble. This restaurant ended up paying, I think, a $25,000 fine. Yeah, okay? Pre-employment transition, part of an array of services, okay? Help the students begin to identify their interests. That'll be explored early on. So again, this is all what's supposed to be happening in collaboration with DRS, okay? Because then they can handle the rest of it once they open the case. Okay, Congress made it clear they have to be given every opportunity to receive the services necessary to achieve competitive integrated employment. That's Congress. And what a great collaboration. Youth jointly served by two systems before the school exit. Talk about a real bang for the buck. Then we get seamless transition. And here, according to Rich Luking, is what it looks like if you've not seen this before. Starting in at least 10th grade. And you can start it sooner than that if you like. That's what he calls the discovery process. You can start it in 9th grade. You can start it at 8th grade, okay? Self-advocacy instruction. Positive personal career profile, not what they can't do. Students leading their IEP, family support, okay? All services adjunct to the school and academic prep. And there's a whole paper on this that Luking wrote probably 10 years ago. Okay, 11th grade, VR should open the case. This is important for those of you who are doing this with them. For post-school education services, that could be community college, could be junior college, work-based experience, and again, student-led IEP. Everything has got to fit together, and we've got to be looking toward service outcomes. And the final one is paid employment and linkage to the support services, paid employment supports, all of that. How do they get connected from DRS to DDD if they need to be in that system, or mental health if they need to be in that system? And you got to do it before you need it, otherwise there'll be a real problem. And then the post-school follow-up kind of stuff, okay? If they need the supports, if they're in post-secondary ed. And then here's the flow chart of what that looks like from Luking going across, you know, the years in high school. Interagency collaboration. Again, let me share with you this word. Collaboration is different from cooperation. Collaboration means joint ownership and responsibility. Oh, well, you screwed up at the school, we did wonderful at doors. No, you screwed up at doors, we did wonderful at school. Collaboration is joint ownership, use of both resources, and agreeing we will both get credit for the outcome or the failure. We'll share it. No. That's because collaboration is different from cooperation. You can look it up in the business dictionary. I didn't want to load you with that here. But that's a really important thing to do. And we've got to make sure that DRS gets their return on the investment as well. Okay? So work experience early and often, paid work key, employment outcomes. I'm going to move along. This, you will have the graphic. This is fascinating, and I wish I could tell you where I got it, because I don't remember. But this is a whole wonderful graphic you could spend a day on just taking it apart about how you build from the student in the center and their outcomes to get best practices in coordination and collaboration. So you will have that as well. Here are all the pathways to competitive integrated employment. We've talked about a bunch of those already, and there's many. This is an amazing, and you ought to share this with everybody in your school, with the school board members, with your superintendents and principals. This is 4 federal agencies all in alignment. The mental health agency, the DD agency, special ed, rehab, all saying, yes, employment is for everybody, no exceptions, okay? And there's some more of the research from Medini about what the benefits are, mental health, social role, more psychological benefits, and you've got the sources here. You can look this stuff up. Increased autonomy, again, Mr. Galen. And then the outcomes of, here's informed choice. You got to provide it. VR has to do that. I love this from J.K. Rowling. Here's the other thing about dignity of risk. Impossible to live without failing at something. Unless you live so cautiously, you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. How's that? Okay, so you can have Lincoln over here and a more contemporary, but they're saying the same thing. There is dignity in risk. We are allowed to fail. We're allowed to think outside the box, outside the label, outside the stigma. Take that with you, share it with your colleagues. Down syndrome doesn't define the student. I've shared with you before the one from Medicaid. This is the person-centered plan template for Medicaid. When they go to the adult system, look at that. Strengths, preferences, needs, and outcomes, goals, preferences, relationship, community participation, employment, income, etc. This is coming from Medicaid in a federal rule that is now 10 years old, that isn't being followed well in most states. Okay? Benefits of employment we talked about earlier. Financial stability, get out of the rut of poverty. And good old President Kennedy said the myths are going to mess us up. ABLE accounts, do all of you know something about ABLE accounts, I hope? Okay. They've been around now for 10 years. Only 600 people in Illinois have ABLE accounts. How come? Because people don't know. You can put away up to 100K. So we got a lot of work to do yet to get to that belonging target. And I love this one from the signing of the ADA. We've got to get to implement what President Bush said. Let the shameful walls of exclusion finally come tumbling down, where people with disabilities are given equal opportunity, equity, independent living, productivity, and a meaningful life as a valued member of the community. We know how to do it. We know what the law says. We know what the research says. Now we have to go back and start figuring out over the next 3-year plan, 5 years. I'm not thinking it's going to happen real quick. How are we going to get there? If we know, though, that's the target from the strategic plan, start building it incrementally. I wish you all the best, and then let us get equal justice. Thank you.